Well, good morning, everyone. You're going to love it. This is a Wednesday edition of the Influencers Podcast coming to you live from Atlanta, Georgia. And I think I might have one of the most intriguing sessions today for everyone who's in my audience. We're going to be talking with Brett Judd, founder of the Apex Effect. And I'm going to let him describe exactly what that is because you must pay attention to what we're talking about today. This is going to be exciting. I'm looking forward to it. Welcome to the show, to the Influencers Podcast, Judd.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bill, for having me here. It is exciting to be on your show.
Yeah, we first got together at Coach Blueprint back in Dallas, Texas.
Long while ago, yeah.
You know, we were both developing our practices, and you are an amazing speaker. You're an amazing clinician, a coach. So you found your way up to Idaho, right?
Well, that's where I'm from,
So
I've always been here.
And I guess you found your way to Dallas, and now you're back home.
Yeah.
I've got to come to Pocatello, and I've got to come to Coeur d'Alene. Those are the two places on my list.
That'd
Is there
incredible to have you up here.
Anywhere else?
You know, that gets both sides of the state. The top end, which is just gorgeous, deep, mountain or that northwest forest, and then down here in Idaho, the bottom corner, Pocatello, is just an entirely different state. It's so diverse, a lot like many places, but if you're going to go that loop, you got to stop in Yellowstone. You go right past if you go from Pocatello up to Coeur d'Alene, so you might as well loop through there as well. We got some beautiful country out here, and it's fantastic.
It's on my bucket list, so
yeah.
Look forward to hearing what you're
bucket list. I am an ardent disagreeer with the idea of bucket lists. It should be a to-do list. This is my to-do list and the things I'm going to accomplish. People put this on their bucket list, and it's for when I'm about to kick the bucket. And well, then you can't do that. This has got to be a to-do list.
Okay, we're going to reset some mindsets today. I can tell we're dealing with a master psychologist. I think that's what it is here. Why don't we get started? Tell us about the Apex Effect. Where were you? What happened? How did you get surrounded by people that led you to be inspired to do what you're doing today?
So the Apex Effect is a concept that I came up with a few years ago, actually, when I was down in going to Dallas for the coaching meetings. I love racing. I love driving. I love, everything car. And one of the things that my dad taught me years and years ago when, we were out in our little Fiat Spider, and he was teaching me how to shift, he was teaching me how to drive, was clipping the corner just right so that you could maximize the transition. And I've thought so much about that over the years. When you take a transition correctly, when you hit the apex of a curve, you actually gain momentum. And there's this slingshot moment where you come in, you lift a little off the gas. Most of the time, you don't even hit the brake. And as you hit that inertia, you gain speed coming out of a corner. For me, that is exactly what we should be looking for in life and every transition opportunity. So many people become afraid of change. They become afraid of transitions and pivots. When in fact, if you look for that apex and you grab a hold of the Apex Effect and that slingshot, it can be some of the best things in life that you ever did. And so for me, that's the foundation of my thought process. And as I got into clinical practice as a clinical social worker, but even earlier in my career, I've noticed these apex moments in people's lives where the smallest movement made just massive change and transformed the rest of their life. And for me, that's huge. That's so very important.
And you use that concept as you coach people to success.
Absolutely.
You found ways to unwrap their potential.
Yeah, which is sitting inside of all of us, and if we will just unlock it and we'll learn how to leverage it and use it, I've yet to meet a person, regardless of circumstance in their life, that don't have potential tapped in there somewhere. Most of the time it is hidden under fear. They've got their foot on a brake. They haven't been able to release it. They're eking their way around a corner instead of leveraging the potential of it. And
Cautious,
that's in all of us.
Timid.
Yeah.
Not sure what actually is the destination. Maybe that's the key.
I think that is a huge key. And then also, what is the backside information that they're listening to? The fears and the worries of other people that have been projected onto them. And so now they're acting out according to the things they've been taught instead of the things that they need to learn and the potential that's ahead of them. So many times that's the case.
That makes a lot of sense. My son Tyler, Tyler,
Yeah.
and he's been a big racer over the years, but
Yep.
he's coaching and doing things similar to what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
He has this program called Fear Factor, and so I think he's tapped into the same thing that you're talking about. If you can overcome your fears, you can accelerate around the curve with a plumb. You can step on the gas and go.
It's absolutely right. It's absolutely right.
So where are we taking this thing now? You mentioned the word third act to me.
So the third act, this is something in the last couple of years, and really in this last year especially, that has become more and more pronounced to me, and a concept that maybe as I'm entering that has become more dear to me. But there's going to be a moment in our life when we enter the third act of life, and that's what I call it. There's the first act, which I think is like the first 25, 30 years, and it's our foundation, it's our education, it's laying down the establishing what we're doing. From infancy to the end of high school, we are learning the base knowledge that we're going to have. And then we at college, where we refine and go into a specialty. And then as we transition to the end of that first act, we are, getting into a career. Maybe we're establishing a family. We're starting to hone into a routine. And then for most of us, as we move into the second act of life, it is kind of the grind. It's the work. We're raising a family. We're going to work. We're paying our mortgage. And so many things can go sideways in the second act that get us in trouble. But that's for another conversation, I guess. But as we go into the third act, and there are so many of us in that and coming into that, we're all going to get there. The kids are now growing and leaving. They don't need us as much. Maybe they're late teen, maybe they're transitioning out, and we're empty nesters. Careers are coming to a transition or a close, and we're thinking, well, now what do I do? I'm still young. I'm still healthy. I've got, another 20, 30 years in me for sure. But this is one of those apex moments, because many of us, as we get older, I look at this with my son, who just graduated college with a computer science degree, and the knowledge that he has of computer versus what I understand about computer. I am absolutely an aged dinosaur compared to the knowledge and understanding. And then I look at his daughter, who's 3, and practically from birth, she has known how to navigate a keyboard and a cell phone. It's as if they're coming out with a technical mind, right? So what does that mean for me as I'm going now into that third act of my life? Am I relevant anymore? Do I have skill that makes sense? What am I going to do? And so that transition is really huge. And what I'm noticing more and more with my clients is I'm getting several who are in that phase. They're beginning to ask, what do I do now? Who am I? What am I supposed to do? What's my relevance? And this imposter syndrome that I've never seen before in people younger at the same degree starts to come out. What do I have to offer? Who am I really? What's my relevance? What's my purpose? All of those things start to come out as we enter into this third act of life, when really, I believe it should be the most exciting period of time in our life. We're freed from the confines of raising our children. We're freeing ourselves from career, and we ought to be out having a great time in this.
Seems like that should be the celebration moment.
Absolutely should be. And
should be.
It needs to be. And if we prep ourselves and anticipate it, it can have such a huge difference.
I read a book by Bob Buford, Halftime. Then I read one that was his sequel, Finishing Well. And I think Finishing Well was talking about the third act.
Mm-hmm.
I think Halftime was talking about the second act into, the point where you're actually making a difference in the world.
Yeah.
But not too many people focus on what you say is the third act. And I think it's a wonderful analogy, because it's the finishing point to put the cherry on top of the entire cake.
Yeah, it is. And honestly, Dr. Bill, I think that this is a new phenomenon, and it's something that as medical science has gotten better, we are living longer. You look at generations before us, you were going to work until you couldn't work anymore, and then maybe you had 5 years in you before you died. Maybe.
And Social Security was set up to begin at your average age of death.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And so we have to change the way that we're looking at, in that second act or in the halftime, what am I going to do and how am I setting myself up for success as I make that pivot into the third act of my life? Where do I want to be? What do I want to do? What do I need to have in place so that I can live the life that I want, and succeed, and not just, wait and exit life at one point because there's nothing left. That would be absolutely miserable.
Why don't we do a little post-mortem, an autopsy on
Okay.
the first act, second act? Why do people fail when they're getting ready to get into the third level?
I think one of the biggest reasons that people fail is that they don't anticipate what's coming. There is a moment in that grind window of the second act where we kind of are just head down, get up, go to work, come home, go to bed, get up, go to work. And we forget that eventually that's going to come to an end. And so we aren't anticipating and preparing. Going back to my love for driving and racing, you have to be looking a turn ahead. The turn that you're in right now, if your eyes aren't up and looking past and beyond to what's the straightaway ahead of you or the turn that's coming immediately after, you will miss it. And you miss it a turn or two ahead. And so one of the biggest reasons that people fail is they're not forward thinking into what's coming next and how do I prepare right now for that. The second reason that I find that people fail is that they're listening to the wrong instructor. They're listening to the wrong coach. They're listening to the wrong internal dialogue. We love our parents.
Maybe it's not a coach. Maybe it's their family,
and that's just
friends. The peer group.
That's the peer group, and more importantly than that, you touched it beautifully. It's the family. Our mothers love us dearly, and the last thing that they want us to do is fail. And so many of them teach us to live in the middle of the road. Don't go too far to the edge. Don't go too far one way or the other, and definitely don't mash the gas to the floor because then it's dangerous. They, out of love and concern, teach us to be moderate in what we're doing instead of taking advantage of opportunities. And I love my mother dearly, but several years ago when I left the university and my professor position that I had to go full on into my private practice life, I remember she said, "I'm worried for you. I hope this works." And I'm like, "Oh, gee, thanks." But those are the things that we hear and we pick up along the way that then cause us to lift. They make it so that we don't take advantage of opportunities. We second guess them. We hold back and we rethink, well, is this the right decision? Should I be doing this? Well, and then we miss those chances. And so I think that's a really important thing. And then I think the final reason is we don't, again, with this idea of coach, we don't have the right person teaching us how to do it any different. We either are out there slinging it on our own, trying to make the most of it, and figuring it out as we go, which is a terrible way to go, or we get the wrong person who isn't teaching us how to maximize and anticipate and prepare. And there are a lot of people who, financial planners and career guidance people who love to teach middle of the road idea. They are not teaching for potential and opportunity. They're not teaching you to look beyond just here's the base and what you need. And that's unfortunate.
It's almost like they're teaching you not to lose. They're not teaching you to win.
I think that's absolutely right. How can we make it so that you don't lose? Not how can you make it so you thrive?
I was talking last night with Audie Cashin and a regent from the ADA, American Dental Association, on a podcast, and it was the topic work-life balance. And one of the things we came up to was you really can't save yourself into profitability and wealth. You can only produce yourself, because there's only a certain small percentage you can save off the expenses. And that's not going to get you wealth. That's just going to maybe get you to tomorrow.
That's right.
Next week, you're still in the same boat. So
That's
you have
absolutely
to
right.
grow and progress and produce results, not just money, but results.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the way you're talking, is that the apex effect is to teach you how to grow.
Right. You have to constantly looking for how can we grow. Going back to that racing theme, I love Formula One. I always have. It's really popular right now. More and more people are looking at it, but there are 20 cars, 10 teams that are on that track, and there will always be the ones out in front. Red Bull right now is dominating. Mercedes, Ferrari, they are always at the front of that pack, and there will always be somebody who's ahead of the pack that you're chasing. Well, that's fine. Let them run their race. Formula One is set up in a way that even people in the midfield can win significantly with the way that they have the constructor prizes and the point structure. And many times the most exciting races are the teams that are in the middle of that pack, who are building and they're growing, and every race they're trying to see, what can we tweak on our car? How can we make it faster, better? What do we need to do to get 1 or 2 car lengths ahead? Not to really compete with the front, not to be on a podium, but can we move this thing from 13th to 10th, 10th to 4th? And I think that's an incredible mindset for all of us, because there's always going to be that person who seems to be succeeding and we can never catch them. Well, fine. You're not running their race. You run your race. And what can you do to now make it 1 place faster, or even a second faster on the next lap? That is the mindset where we then become successful. Or, I'm really happy in 15th place out of 20, and so I'm just going to float here. And there are a lot of people who do that. And I think that is a, really destination for mediocrity and failure.
So you're talking about trying to promote that the winner take all philosophy isn't the best philosophy, because it leaves everybody else in the dust.
Absolutely.
You want to have a more spread out success rate.
You have to run your own race, and you have to look at success differently than somebody else got there before I did. Well, there's always going to be somebody else who got there before you did. What are you going to do with the race that you're in, and how can you make it just 1 step better? How can you make it, more efficient and faster for you? That is the race that, if we will focus our attention back into that, where we now have claimed total and complete control of our opportunity.
I like that. That's pretty dynamic, if you ask me. Hey, let me ask you this. What motivates you to keep doing what you're doing and pressing forward with the apex effect in coaching?
For me, it really just comes down to an absolute love for watching people succeed. And as I do that, I'm succeeding as well. But for me, it really comes down to a love for seeing people have that aha wake up moment where like, oh, I can do this. And then seeing them move forward. Our mutual coach that we had said, I can't remember exactly how Mike used to say it, but basically your success is evidence of the success of people around you. If I'm succeeding, that means other people that I'm helping are succeeding. And that motivates me huge to keep doing this work, because
coaches, their main product is the success of other people.
The success of other people. Absolutely. Yeah. The end of the day, when I leave my office, when I get done, I reflect back, whose life did I change? What aha moment did I give, access to somebody today or help them come to? And that motivates me every day. I look at my calendar, I'm like, oh, sweet, I get to work with this person, or we get to keep resolving that. For me, I love that. That just is a huge driver.
It would be like Bobby Cox of the Atlanta Braves back in the 1990s coaching Chipper Jones, yeah, Hall of Fame, John Smoltz, Hall of Fame, Tom Glavine, Hall of Fame, Greg Maddux, Hall of Fame. I mean, what more could you want than to have a coach who puts everybody into the top spot?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, if you can move them into the top spot of what they're doing. And actually, I love that example, because here you have very successful, high performing people already, right? But they're getting coaching and they're moving forward. I have some people right now that I work with. One of them is on one end of that, second act of life. The other is on the front end of it. But both of them are already highly successful. One gentleman is moving into, empty nester. He just sold off an incredibly profitable fiber optic installation company. The other is building this beautiful IT company. They're very successful already, but yet they're recognizing, I have some barriers, I have some holdbacks. I need to find a way to release some of this to just be that much better. And great people, successful people, will always be looking for that potential to let go of one more shackle that's holding them back.
I'm thinking your company motto might be, take your foot off the brake.
Yeah, well, and it is to some degree. It's this embrace the only constant in life, change.
Change happens. Yes, it does.
Yeah, and we can either fear it and fight it, or we can embrace it. We have to embrace that one constant in life, and that's fear, or fear. Well, we do that, but change.
So it's basically navigate.
Yeah.
What about the success secrets? You got anything you can share?
Don't stop. Too many times people, they fail. They gave it an effort. They, sticking with this, racing idea, they went into the gravel. And then they sit there like, well, that didn't work. I guess I better go back to the convenience store and just work the rest of my life. No. If you pushed it to the point that you slid off, you did something right, because you were pushing. And so you've got to get back in, assess it, analyze it. What did I do right and what didn't work? Not where did I fail, what didn't work? And I think that that's a huge piece that people have to look for. You've got to reframe failure into a learning opportunity. And we hear that all the time, but it is so critical. Research that's out there right now that's been, for the last about 20 years, looking at the success of students. A researcher by last name of Schweck came out with a huge book several years ago looking at this, and she found that the students who were encouraged to fail by their parents, the ones who got into the harder classes with the expectation that they could get a C and that was okay, as long as they were trying and that failure was acceptable, they were the ones who went on and succeeded greatly, because they were able to have that resilience. So that's the very, you have to be accepting of failure.
Brett, you just told me why I succeeded in life.
Okay.
I had such a terrible freshman year in college because I took AP classes and I got my lunch handed to me.
Mm,
And I didn't realize that it was just setting me up for success. So
yeah,
now I feel much better. Thank you for that consultation moment.
absolutely. Absolutely. You
So
know,
my son Tyler had several wins in several races, but he
mhm,
also had a T-bone fire crash, and he also had another car land on top of his car in a wreck,
wow. Wow.
and the other car's uh, bumper was only about 6 inches from his head when it came to rest.
Wow.
So you can spin out, you can slide in the gravel, but you can also crash and burn. What do you do in
Absolutely.
helping people if they crash and burn to get back up and go again?
You know, that's a really, that's a deep question. And it goes into a lot of the clinical work that I do, not just the coaching. There is trauma. There is psychological impact of some of these failures, some of these moments that it doesn't go well. And we have to address that. It is not something that you can just, stuff in your back pocket, ignore, pull on your boots and get up and go the next morning. Too many people, I think, have this, pioneer mentality was like, we just got to dig in, be more resilient, just shovel on and we're going to make it. There is a moment that is essential when you sit down, you process it, you look at it, you deal with the impact, and then you get up and move forward and figure out what you can do next. But again, not to beat this theme up, but if you wreck your car, you can't just like, well, that didn't work, let's get back in the car and drive again. You have to rebuild before you can try again.
Great
And
analogy.
mentally and emotionally, we have to rebuild before we can jump in and just power forward.
Yeah, you probably met my wife along the way up in Dallas as we were doing the coaching, and
We have,
she's a 20-year veteran of the prayer ministry counseling
yeah,
arena,
yeah.
and her specialty is trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with what you're saying. If you don't deal with the trauma, a lot of people, they can't move on.
Right. It biologically and neurologically, we are designed to survive. And the brain is going to do whatever it has to make sure that we survive. Years ago, Gina and I, my wife, were at a training when we were learning how to do neurofeedback. And we were learning the neural systems of the brain. And one of our trainers said, you have to think about the brain as an alien entity and the body as its host. And we're like, all right, this is weird. Where are we headed? And it said, if you think about the brain, it produces nothing that it needs to survive. It needs the heart in order to get the blood and the oxygen that it needs to survive. It needs the lungs to get the oxygen into the blood. It needs the gut to get the nutrients and the neurotransmitters that it needs to function. If the body is not functioning the way that it's supposed to, the brain will die, and the brain is the regulator of everything. And so it doesn't care if you have a lisp. It doesn't care if you have a limp. It doesn't care if you are mediocre in your life and what you're doing, as long as the body is producing oxygen, blood, and nutrient. And so when you go through a trauma, the brain is going to sit back and say, we don't need to do that anymore because that put me in jeopardy. And we can play with that system if we get on top of it, but we have to be able to get on top of it. You brought up a really important word that a lot of people think, well, I don't have any trauma in my life. We all have trauma in our life. And there are capital T trauma moments, like your son with a car on top of him, and the bumper near his head. And there's that, oh my gosh, I am about to die moment. That is trauma. Years ago, I was with my kids in our Suburban, and a lady ran a red light, T-boned us, and her car was small enough it went underneath us, putting us in our Suburban airborne. That was a trauma, but the ones that we don't think about, and this is the one that grind and really get us in trouble, are the lowercase t traumas. That is that pothole after bumping into the curb, day in, day out grind. Nothing major, nothing overwhelming, but eventually something breaks. And those are the ones compounded over time that all of a sudden collapse us, and we're like, how in the world did I get here? And so we have to be aware that when we start talking about this survival mechanism of the brain to keep the body alive, it doesn't have to be a one-off event assault. The assault and the attack of day and the grind of life, I equate it to a dirt road. If you ever, we have a lot of them up here in the mountains, and you get off the highway and you get onto that dirt road and you're driving and it's washboarded and it's got rocks and there's potholes in it. When you get back onto that highway, I guarantee you're going to hear a rattle, a squeak, or the car is going to tug and pull in a certain direction that it didn't before. And you didn't hit a traumatic experience on that dirt road, but the grind of it became overwhelming, and now you have the fallout. And that is a huge piece that people miss, that we have to take hold of when we want to find success in our life.
It could be somebody not getting mugged on the street, but it could be just a word spoken over them that impacts their brain because it's a shock to their belief system.
Is absolutely right.
We call it lies people believe that are spoken over them that's not really true, but they believe it because somebody spoke it over them.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Yeah.
Hey, let's do a quick lightning round. Give me a couple of answers quickly on these questions. Why should somebody buy from you, become your client?
Because when I get with somebody, I give them, I know this is going to sound trite, but I give everything I can to make sure that person is going to succeed. I don't have a package that's like one-off. I want to see you, and so we make it work for you.
Who is your ideal client?
The individual who recognizes that they want to change, not just that change needs to happen, but I'm ready, I want this, and I'm ready to go to work.
Somebody with a can opener.
Yeah. Yeah. And exactly right. And willing to use it.
How do you find these clients?
A lot of it comes honestly through social media, the posts that I make, the community that I get in, opportunities like this. And they're like, oh my gosh, this guy, maybe he's got something that can help me. That's where it comes from.
Yeah, I was talking to a wine guy the other day, and I asked him, how do you crush your competition? That wasn't fair.
Oh my gosh.
Don't tone, But
yeah.
How do you beat your client, your competition?
I don't know, because I'm in competition with myself, and my whole objective isn't, can I do it better than somebody else? Can I do it the absolute best for the person who just came to me and said, Brett, I need your help? To me, that is the competition. I don't care what somebody else is doing over there. You asked me, that's my competition, is to give you everything that you came and asked me for.
Perfect. So give me your well-defined product. What is it? A coaching spot, a class? What is it?
So a couple of ways. You can either do it as self-directed, which, is great for people who are busy and they don't think they can do one-on-one, or we can add to that some individual coaching on top of the modularized package.
And what about yourself? You're a pretty balanced guy, I know. What are you grateful for today?
The thing that I'm grateful for, and I feel this most every day, is the potential to do something again. That I got up this morning, I'm healthy enough to get up and go to work and to help other people. And I just love that. Every day when we wake up, we have an opportunity, and we've been granted one more chance to do something good. And to me, I'm totally grateful for that every morning.
It's good to have a positive coach instead of one who just gripes at what you're doing that's wrong.
Oh,
so I think you probably have that personality that people gravitate to. Tell me about your advice. You're looking back at your 20-year-old self. What are you going to tell yourself to do?
I would honestly tell myself to not listen to people who aren't doing what it is that I'd like to do. Find the right mentor, find the right guide, find the right person, and to stop listening to the internal dialogue that's holding me back.
You know, you and I both were with Mike Crow and Coach Blueprint,
Yeah.
but do you have a current living mentor, and what was the impact on you?
It would have to be, honestly, my mother. She hasn't had the easiest of life. She has worked hard her entire life. And this last spring, she was in the hospital for 7 weeks and is still dealing with the physical outcome of that. But yet, as soon as she was back out of the hospital and back up on her feet, she was back selling homes. And she, even though she isn't 100%, she's back to doing the things she loves. She's back to doing the thing that's taken care of her, and she has never stopped. And to me, she's just an incredible example of tenacity.
Beautiful. Glad to hear. So why is being impactful important for you? She impacted you so much.
Because I get an opportunity when I work with people to not just change their life, but I am changing a next generation after them too. Because if I get to work with a mom or a dad and change how they see things and how life is going for them, I guarantee you that's going to change the way that they interact with their kids and the things that they're now going to teach their kids. And that generation is going to be better as well. It's deep when you make the right changes.
You want to be remembered. Everybody does have some legacy left behind. What would be the thing that you aspire to leave?
I think that I thought more about other people than I did myself, that my work was to benefit and change the experience and the life of other people.
That pretty much mirrors something that you and I both are familiar with and involved with, is kind of following the vision Ashton McFar has in ONPASSIVE and his desire to change the world, to uplift humanity, bring a source of hope for people all around the globe.
Yeah.
Speak to that a moment, how that reflects transition into the third act.
You know, I think about this as a form of legacy. Sometimes people think about legacy and it's like, what can my inheritance be? What can I transition on to my kids? But that's irrelevant. And a lot of times, where we live, it used to be a lot of farmland. It's all getting, planted with houses now, which is fine. People need a place to live. But most of those farms were inheritance of the kids of the farmer. And they're like, I don't want to sit on a tractor all day. What the heck is that? And so the legacy that dad and grandpa or whoever handed to them became a checkbook when they were able to sell it off as investment, development property. Well, that killed the legacy. And so what can I do? What can I hand on to the next generation that actually has value, that has worth, that has longevity, and that is going to expand? And for me, that is where our real value lies. And that's what, ONPASSIVE is doing. And what the whole vision of that, the development of that has been to create something that's going to live beyond the creators.
It's a beautiful concept. I'm glad that we get to experience that together and discover as it develops. So, Brett, tell us how we can support you in your work, and how can people get in touch with you?
The easiest way to get in touch with me really is brett@theapexeffect.com. I'm pretty active on social media in Facebook, and I have a group, the Apex Effect. And lately I've been getting involved in TikTok. It's a fun place to just do some real quick video and drop some nuggets of insight. And I try to do, 2 or 3 of those a day as I get a chance. But really just Facebook at the Apex Effect group that's out there, or if you wanted to directly get hold of me, it's brett@theapexeffect.com.
That's beautiful. I think that's a good one. People can go right to it and experience who you really are.
Yeah,
What would you say about your experience?
This is who I am. This is what you get.
Hey, I like it. I've got a beer stein behind me.
Yeah.
And it's a collection I started years ago. And, you got to sit down with friends and have a cold one every now and then.
Every now and then you do. I think that's one of the most important things, is to pause and to come back to what's most important. You talked about something we kind of wrap maybe this, but I don't believe that there's such a thing as balance. You know, no matter what I do, whether it's here with you right now, I'm neglecting something else that I needed to take care of, or whether it's going out last night with my wife and having dinner and talking. We missed out on an opportunity to be with our granddaughter before she went to bed last night. And balance is in the moment and taking advantage of the moment that's given to you and being present in that space, or every space that you're given. You know, too many people are chasing this unicorn of life balance. Everything is always going to be out of balance somewhere because there's so many demands on us, but being present in the moment, that's amazing.
Brett Judd says you cannot balance it, so you just got to deal with it. And there is no bucket list. So what are we going to do now?
You make your to-do list and you start checking things off.
I've been doing all my life. I don't think I ever had a bucket with any sides on it. I was always filling the bucket.
No, you've lived. You've done some great stuff, and you live.
Tell me about your experience on the show today. Did we have some fun?
Oh, absolutely. I love conversations like this that, we can just talk and share some ideas and help other people.
I like talking to friends on my podcast. It's so easy. It's like homeboy. You my homeboy? Let's let you have the final word, and then I'll come back and we'll talk a few seconds before we close out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stay with me, but I'm going to give you the final word. Go ahead.
One of my absolute favorite, theories or philosophies comes from Seneca, and it's like, if you don't know what port you're making for, no wind is the right wind. And if you don't know what it is that you're doing, what it is that you're trying to achieve in life, where you want to be in the next, 5-10 years, or as you enter into the third act, then really there is no objective, and we have to know where we're going in order to get there and get there effectively.
There you have it. That is Brett Judd with the Apex Effect. And as he goes into his third act or close to it, we're going to follow you along and see how you're doing, because I think you're a fun guy. Let me tell the audience who's following, and there's a lot of people who maybe don't know what's going on between Brett and I and a whole lot of others, about 1 million of us around the world already, 2 million even, if you talk about the total group. But we have something that is going to allow freedom. So if you can wrap your head around the idea that you can be free a lot earlier in your life, and the third act can be a lot better, maybe you'll look into what we're doing. The ONPASSIVE arena is it's a sandbox to play in. That's my way of putting it. So you can see my digital business card here. Click on the QR code by taking a picture of it. Go to that URL, and you're going to find two things there, Brett. You can find my podcast. Every one of them I've done, 60 of these influencer podcasts to date, are on Dr. Bill Williams TV, that URL. And you'll find all about our AI technology at this OTRIM URL shortener that we have for free. Everybody can use it. You can actually make your QR code with this technology, and we give it away free. So we have a lot of free products. But I think, Brett, the one you're going to use the most is OConnect.
Yeah.
You're going to use this to connect with every client. You're going to only be using OConnect, and every teacher will be using OConnect, and coach will be using it. It's basically going to be the video conferencing tool of the future. How do I know? Well, inside information says it's going to be mostly free for everybody to use. If you know how to do the game, it'll be free. And so instead of paying $6,000 a month to reach 10,000 people, it's free.
Beautiful idea.
Anyway, I want to let everybody know that Brett Judd is a friend of mine. Check him out, and we'll look forward to hearing more from you in the future. Let's do another podcast down the road and see how things have developed in the third act.
Sounds beautiful. Absolutely appreciate being here.
You're welcome. that's the end of the session today. Stay tuned for another one coming up. This is Dr. Bill Williams on the Influencer Podcast. So long, everybody.